Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 218, Preparations. In the blink of an eye, it was already the end of the second month. The Dan City case became a major case known to all in Chu capital. No headway was made even with Pan Lin detained for half a month in the joint hearing hall. Discussions were rife amongst the scholars on the streets. They pinned their hopes on Shui Zio's woe, and the memorials impeaching Pan Xiangji in the imperial court increased by the day. When the snow stopped, a row of merchants from Juexi also arrived in Chu capital. Xiao Wu was all wrapped up like a dumpling, yet he was extremely agile as he leaped from the carriage and stood at the checkpoint to chat merrily with the minor staff in charge of tax collection. The drapes of the carriage behind him lifted and Qiang, who had grown a short beard, stepped off. Qiang flicked up a copper coin with his thumb and caught it with a steady hand. He smiled at the minor staff. With these goods of ours coming and going all the time, we've long grown to be on familiar terms. I hope my lord will grace us with your presence at Donglong Street tonight. I have to thank you properly for looking out for my younger brother last year. The minor staff with the book of taxes under his arm knew that this person was a merchant from Juexi. When Xiao Wu had escorted the goods to and fro last year, he had forked out a considerable sum of money. Now that the minor staff had finally met Qiang, he was all friendly with him despite it being his first time meeting the latter. The minor staff jumped off the wagon with an exclamation of surprise and cupped his hands at Qiang as he said with a merry laugh, "I'm just a lowly clerk doing menial work. How could I presume myself worthy of being called lord by Master Ji? You are the superior, our superior." Qiang, having returned to Chu capital again after a year, noted the many checks being carried out at the entrance of the city gates in which they were carefully scrutinizing the travel permits and registers of the coming and going companies of merchants. Without batting an eyelid, he said to the minor staff, "It's such a chilly day. How long do you have to stand here?" The queue of merchants in the back still seemed rather long to me. Standing at the side, the minor staff accepted the tobacco Qiang passed to him. He had received a substantial amount of respect bribes from Qiang, so he was naturally more than willing to socialize with him. He promptly started grousing half in jest. "I have to stand here until the city gates close. If it wasn't for the lack of other capabilities, who would be willing to stand like a pole around here? You may not be aware of this, but around 100 or so merchants pass through the checkpoints in a single day, and a great number of them resort to various means of trickeries to evade taxes. They are really scums." Qiang took the opportunity to carry on the conversation. "Isn't this a deliberate attempt to hinder all of you from carrying out your duties?" "Exactly." The minor staff paved the way for Qiang as he met the latter's eyes. "I've been collecting taxes here for so long. Of all the people that I've met, Master Ji is the most righteous." Qiang patted the minor staff on the shoulder and offered a few words of comfort. The minor staff asked, "Did Master Ji make this trip in person this time because of a big deal?" Qiang was presently smoking a pipe. He never did so during his time in the Jinyi Way, but these were indispensable tools for socializing in Juexi. He answered in the affirmative, then turned his head aside to exhale smoke. "It's not easy to do business now. The various regions are strict with their checks, so we have to go through this city or through Quan City. The taxes for transporting large shipments of goods through these territories are too exorbitant. I've long lost hopes of making a fortune." After he finished, he lamented again, "All of you are in a much better position. You won't go wrong working for the imperial court, and you look mighty imposing doing it, too. Master Ji hasn't been here much." The minor staff sucked on a pipe as he continued, "There are some arrogant sons of a bitch that don't even see us as human beings just because they have money. They throw their weight and boss us around when they pass through the checkpoint. There have been many incidents of them trampling all over us." The words spoken by the minor staff were laced with half-truths and half-lies. Tax collection was a lucrative job. The people he dealt with day in and day out were all merchants who hailed from various lands. Moreover, there were few troublemakers given that it was the honorable capital city of the Son of Heaven, and the slightly more discerning merchants would all take the initiative to grease the officials' palms. That was why the minor staff who could be stationed at this checkpoint typically had someone in the higher authorities who were looking out for them. But it was also true that they could not afford to offend those like the Shi clan when they occasionally came across them. It has been hard on all of you, brothers. Qiang waved his hand at Xiao Wu to signal him to bring the goods in. Then let's do this. I'll host a banquet at Yanyu Tavern on Donglong Street and wait for you there. Once you and the other brothers are off duty, head straight over there. We shall drink to our heart's content then. The minor staff answered, Master Ji is too kind. Then I shall not stand on ceremony and accept the invitation. Qiang smiled and followed the company of merchants into the city. Xiao Wu led the horse over and asked, Qinggur, why are you giving them a treat? They're all rats, and extremely greedy and corrupt ones at that. Master said to go fishing. Qiang tossed the copper coin between his fingers to Xiao Wu. How are we to hook a fish without bait? The tariffs at the city gate checkpoints were administered by the Chu Capital Commercial Tax Office that fell directly under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Revenue. The minor general function staff were mediocre and unqualified, relying solely on their backers in the higher authorities to vouch for them. Even if they embezzled silver here, they had to consider the gravity of it. For instance, the large shipment of goods that Qiang had transported last year would easily cost several thousands in private taxes. How would the minor staff have the guts to swallow it all? They only dared to embezzle a small fraction of it, for the majority of the tax still had to be handed over to their higher-ups. It was on Shen Zequan's order that Qiang returned to the capital this time to fish for these higher-ups. Let's go. Qiang patted Xiao Wu on the back as he looked at the fresh snow on the glazed tiles, and get back to our old residence first. Yao Wenyu's illness did not take a turn for the better, and taking multiple bowls of medicine did not help at all. It was only today when the Jinyue were testing out the new horses that he had the opportunity to venture outdoors to enjoy the breeze. Being meticulous, Fei Shen had already prepared a screen before Shen Zequan gave his orders. He had also placed a charcoal brazier under the shack to keep Yao Wenyu from getting cold. Shen Zequan saw Xiao Qi standing at the very front, saying something to Haragu about something. Without shifting his gaze away, he simply tilted his head slightly to say to Yao Wenyu, it's inevitable for Qiang to be homesick after having been in Juexi for a long time. As a native of Chu capital, he still has kinfolks at home. The agate on the prefectural lord's bright and fair earlobe swayed as he moved and brushed against his fur collar, appearing all the more breathtakingly captivating. Red suited him. All those white fur robes of his diminished the dazzling gorgeousness of his facial features, giving him an overly amicable appearance when necessary. Only red could draw out his sharp, penetrating edge. This was a process of honing the blade. The higher he sat, the more conspicuous those sharp edges hidden away in the depths would become. All the officials in key positions in the Chu Capital Commercial Tax Office are from the noble clans. Yao Wenyu was unwilling to reveal even a hint of frailty in the presence of outsiders, so he had a blanket over him and appeared sufficiently spirited. Since your lordship intends for Qiang to start making his move here, you can make use of Shi Hongxuan's old acquaintances. That won't do. Shen Zequan watched as Haragu got on the horse. The Jinyue on the other end got on their horses, too. Fei Shen was leaning over to speak to Jiao Tianya. Shen Zequan continued, most of Shi Hongxuan's old acquaintances are involved with Shueziaozuo. Shi Hongxian could enter the capital during the reign of Xian because Shueziaozuo went to a lot of effort. These people are a various mixed of people, so we have to screen and select them carefully before using them. With Pan Lin dismissed from his post, Yao Wenyu said, Liang Qiushan is now the pawn with the most promising future. I only fear that Qiang won't be able to make it in time for the Dan City case if he is to explore a new pathway of clues under his watch. We can't intervene in the Dan City's case. Sensing something moving at his waist, Shenzhequan lowered his eyes and saw Hanu reaching its paw out for the tassel on his folding fan. It is of no benefit to me regardless of who wins or loses in this game that is the Dan City's case. I had Qiang return to Chu capital not to have him stir up a storm in the Dan City's case but to wait for a winner to emerge. Yao Wenyu did not notice Hanu, his eyes were on Xiao Tianya on the riding tracks. The recruitment criteria of the Jinyi way of Zongbo were determined by Xiao Tianya. All dressed in a body-fitting outfit today, he bent over and lowered his arm to pick up a boisterous Ding Tao who was running all over and tossed the latter to Gu Jin, who was behind him. Then he hooked Li Xiong's collar with his horsewhip and tossed Li Xiong to Gu Jin, too. The 5th month is when the busy farming season ends, Yao Wenyu said. Libei is still fighting a war. Your lordship is planning ahead in preparation for a rainy day. The end of the busy farming season meant that farm work such as plowing and the like would be wrapped up, and the pressure on the Grand Secretariat would subsequently ease up, leaving them with enough energy to start confronting Zongbo and Libei. Shenzhequan had to ensure that his supply line would not break. He had to shoulder the military provision supply for 3 parties this year, but he had lost the Shi clan's copper mine in Juexi and the Lu province's port which he was planning for with Yanhiru was only in its beginning stage this year. If they were to get further contained by Chu capital, then the battle zone would become even more perilous. If Shui Yanqing wins, Yao Wenyu looked at Shenzhequan, where will your lordship look for his weakness? I can't find one. Shenzhequan swung the tassel. I couldn't find Shui Yanqing's weakness even way back in Chu capital. There is nothing that this person can't forsake. He cut me off from Shi Hongxuan's money vaults and yet he's still willing to wear old official robes and head down to the local areas to carry out field work himself. He has my admiration. Lang Tao Shuijin sped past the field, and cheers erupted. Xiao Qiye pulled the reins and smiled at Shenzhequan from afar. The frostiness in Shenzhequan's eyes disappeared. He turned the folding fan over. He did a clean job with the silk from Quan City's case, too. I can't catch him, but no man is an island, himself included. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Shui Ziyi pressed the handkerchief down to blow his nose. He prided himself on being a virtuous and lofty man of letters yet his actions were rather crude. His official robe was slovenly worn, with the corners black and wrinkled. Shui Ziyuo was now at the height of his career and the peak of his power but Shui Ziyi had only muddled his way into a sinecure post. Having squandered away the family fortune in his early years, he now even had to think twice just to eat a bowl of noodles worth a copper coin. The fellow official at the side was fed up with Shui Ziyi but he dared not show it openly and merely said, "You're still sick, so it's fine even if you rest at home for 2 days. Why push yourself so? I'll call for a physician to take a look at you later." Shui Ziyi felt as if he had lost face when he heard that. He was a legitimate son of a noble clan, and yet the way his fellow official put it made it seem like he could not even afford to pay the fees of a physician, so he crumbled up his handkerchief and said at the top of his voice, "I have an in-house physician waiting in attendance at home. When have we ever lacked a physician at home? I've just been so busy with my official duties that I forgot about it. I'll call for him to take a look when I get back later." His fellow officials all knew he was just pretending to be leading an extravagant life when he was in fact, so poor that he was fighting with his wife over it all day long at home. Furthermore, all his maidservants and such were all already been sold off. So they simply mumbled a few vague words in a perfunctory attempt to beg off the conversation and no longer bothered themselves with him. It was getting dark at this point in time, and people were leaving the office compound one after another. Shui Ziyi sat on the cold bench facing the stove with the intent to dry his wet boots but as it turned out, the candle was blown out. He was used to a life of luxury when he was young, and there were always maidservants, young and old, to accompany him even when he slept. He feared the dark, so on seeing the candle light gone out, He hastily stood up and hurried outside. Several fellow officials were standing around in the courtyard smoking their pipes as they made plans to go drinking later. Xue Ziyi walked over to the door with great haste and heard them say, "Isn't it obvious enough? I've long heard that the Xue clan treated their illegitimate sons extremely harshly, especially this eldest Xue." The fellow official said in a hushed tone. Back then, during the reign of Yanji, the old master of the Xue clan was willing to let His Excellency Yanqing study with him precisely because the eldest Xue son was really not cut out for it. Mr. Chang Zong even called him a hopeless case beyond teaching. Xue Ziyi's heart went cold. He was particular about his reputation, so he promptly shrank back behind the door and put up with the shame as he listened to them continue the conversation. "That's why Xue Yanqing is reluctant to promote him now," someone said, "and just had him placed in a yamen position with practically no obligations. His monthly salary can't even be compared to the beggars outside. It would have been fine if the heirs of their clan had noble title to inherit just like the Fei clan, but unfortunately, that's not the case. The men Xue Yanqing recommended for office all seem to me to be unaffiliated scholars from the Imperial Academy. Most of these people were successful candidates in the imperial examinations held in the spring in the previous years and have passed the palace examinations. They are all virtuous talents. How is this eldest Xue going to get promoted? He knows nuts about nothing. I told him to sort out the old court cases, and he can even somehow transcribe 8 words on one piece of paper without making a mistake." They put their heads together and snickered. Both of Xue Ziyi's hands trembled. He gripped his drenched robe, wanting to charge out and rage at these despicable people mocking him behind his back. But he was not the same person as he used to be back then. He had no part in the Xue clan's honor and glory, and he relied on this bit of salary to make a living. He did not dare to shoot his mouth off like he had done so when he humiliated Pan Lin back then. Who does Xue Yanqing think he is? Xue Ziyi craned his neck and spat. Contemptible illegitimate son born of a concubine. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 219, Reward. Lang Tao Xuejin was invincible on the riding tracks. It was the undisputed, uncrowned king of the Hanjian Mountains, and even when faced up against the Biancha battle ponies, those that could rival it were few and far between. After having his fun for 2 laps, Xiao Qiye called it a day and dismounted to drink up Shenzequan's remaining tea on the table. Still lingering on the rim of the cup was the prefectural lord's warmth. A day like today is hard to come by. Xiao Qiye finished the tea and took a hot handkerchief to wipe his hand. "Let's put up a reward and let them have their fun. We have plenty of available rewards." Shenzequan turned his head and said to the maidservant before him, "Tell them I have a big reward for them if they win the race." Xiao Qiye sat down, his long legs crowding up all the space until Shenzequan barely had the legroom to put his own. He asked, "What's the reward?" Shenzequan smiled but didn't answer. The few of them who were riding their horses on the field stopped in their tracks. Tantai, who was entertained to hear that there was a reward. "This is taking unfair advantage of our Zongbo." The various generals of Libei were all adept in the art of horsemanship, but the guards of Zongbo were not. As far as the prize was concerned, Gu Jin and Wu Ziyu would be expected to win it. There was no suspense at all to this race. Fei Sheng, who was sitting on horseback, said to Qiao Tianya, "Why don't you participate?" Qiao Tianya pulled the reins, greeted Gu Jin at the back, and answered, "You represent the prefectural lord. Aren't you ashamed to surrender without a fight? Tao Sui, come on up. Do a run with your Lao Shigur." Ding Tao grasped over the reins and said to Fei Sheng, "Don't be afraid. Jingur has never outrun me back in Libei. I'll block him for you later. You just focus on racing Wu Ziyu." "I'm not afraid." Fei Sheng saw Qiao Tianya withdrawing and hurriedly added, "Then you can't retreat either. Us brothers have to work as one." Qiao Tianya pointed at the back with his horsewhip. Fei Sheng took a look. Huo Lingyuan was there, too. Qiao Tianya said, the last track is narrow. Don't over-engage with Wu Ziyu. Just shut your eyes to everything else and spur your horse on. There will be no lack of people behind you to help you block the others. By this, he meant to give Fei Sheng a leg up with Huo Lingyuan, giving Fei Sheng the chance to be on the forefront. For a while, Fei Sheng did not know what to feel. He cupped his fists at Qiao Tianya and said, "You're truly a real brother in my time of need." Yao Wenyu could not hear their conversation, but upon seeing that Qiao Tianya was backing away, he understood what they meant to do. Holding the teacup with his fingers, Xiao Qiye looked at the track and ruminated it over. This Qiao Tianya is way too self-effacing. The horse race was a spur-of-the-moment affair, meant for everyone to just have fun. But it did not mean that the Jinyi Wei could lose too badly and make a disgrace out of themselves. The Libei armored cavalry and the Zongbo garrison troops were both present too, and yet Qiao Tianya still handed the opportunity to Fei Sheng. The second master was saying that Qiao Tianya had no drive and spirit. With Hanu in his arms, Yao Wenyu looked at Qiao Tianya and said nothing. Shen Zequan spread his folding fan open a little and closed it again. He looked as if he had it all figured out as he maintained his silence and remained calm. Xiao Sheng. Yin Chang stepped on the fence and straddled it as he let loose a hair-trending shout at Fei Sheng, "Quick, run! Faster! Win, and this old man will take you drinking." Before Yin Chang could finish his words, Gu Jin's horse went racing past like a whirlwind. The old man ate a mouthful of dust and got all so anxious he very nearly bolted to his feet. Gu Jin and Wu Ziyu worked hand in glove to obstruct Fei Sheng's path ahead. Fei Sheng was half a step too slow and could not overtake them. Behind him, Ding Tao spurred his horse on and passed by Fei Sheng to block the backside of Gu Jin's horse from the outer flank. He pressed so close that Gu Jin had no choice but to slow down and give way to Wu Ziyu. "Jingur, did you hide a tail of silver in your old boots? It soaked through. Before I set off, Lu Shen at the entrance of our residence even asked me when you'd be paying for the wine you took on credit. That was so embarrassing." Ding Tao spoke with increasing gusto as he continued, "So I took the liberty of taking the money out of your boots and paid off half of it." "Half? Can you imagine? Exactly how much of a tab did you rack up? My accounts are all a mess now." Driven beyond the limit of his forbearance, Gu Jin turned his head aside and yelled, "Shut up!" The instant his attention was diverted, Fei Sheng took over the inner lane. Gu Jin treasured horses and was unwilling to force his way through. Both of them raced neck to neck with one another for a while and gained in on Wu Ziyu until Wu Ziyu could feel the chill on his ass. The width of the riding tracks differed. Once they cleared this distance, a slightly wider bend lay ahead. Gu Jin wanted to close in on Fei Sheng and push him back here, while Fei Sheng wanted to overtake Gu Jin here. Both of them shut their mouths tight and galloped in the dust. Seeing as the bend was just right in front, Gu Jin clamped down hard on his horse's belly. Ding Tao had long withdrawn behind him, and Huo Lingyuan had taken over his place now. As soon as Huo Lingyuan approached, Gu Jin realized that this man's horsemanship was pretty decent. He was a more intimidating rider than Fei Sheng was. The bend turned abruptly and the head of Gu Jin's horse veered over. Unexpectedly, Huo Lingyuan, who was catching up from the side, suddenly accelerated. His pony's sturdy foreneck turned direction as well, pushing Gu Jin towards the inner lane. Gu Jin urgently pulled at his reins, but the horse could not break in time. It was cornered so aggressively that it slanted sideways and was about to bump into Fei Sheng, who was in the innermost lane. With his spot suddenly narrowing, Fei Sheng subconsciously tightened his right grip on the reins in an attempt to avoid a collision. His horse promptly turned its head aside and scraped against the fence, breaking the wooden rails as it tore along it. Alarmed, the horse tripped over the rails in its haste and instantaneously went falling head first. "Fuck!" Tan Tai-hu jerked to his feet. The horse twisted its front knees when it fell over. Fei Sheng acted quickly amidst the kicked-up dust and immediately hugged his head to protect it as he rolled on the ground. He was so startled that he broke out all over in a cold sweat. Gu Jin, having already stopped, dismounted first and pulled Fei Sheng to his feet. Fei Sheng kicked out his legs as he stood up. His robe was full of mud and soil all over. He wiped the sweat off his face and turned his head aside to spit out a tooth, then assured Qiao Tianya behind them, "I'm fine." Huo Lingyuan cracked his horsewhip, vaguely looking as if he was going to overtake Wu Ziu on the gradually narrowing track. Having heard the commotion, Wu Ziu said as Huo Lingyuan pressed in towards him, "Isn't that rather underhanded, buddy?" Huo Lingyuan half bent his body down as he shot forth like a sharp arrow slicing through the wind. The momentum of his forward charge was too swift and fierce. He was hell-bent on overtaking Wu Ziu that he totally disregarded the fences on both sides of the track and simply let his calves scrape against the railings until they drew blood. Wu Ziu's stirrup scraped against the fence until fragments of wood broke off. He cursed gruffly, "Motherfucking." This half of the fence was already teetering on the verge of collapse after Fei Sheng's incident. Wu Ziu heard a crash as the fence broke apart on impact. Not daring to race to the death with Huo Lingyuan, he promptly turned around and led his horse out of the track. Wu Ziu gave a light spat and bent over to hug his horse's neck, his voice hoarse as he said comfortingly, "This is so aggravating for my Kangwei." Huo Lingyuan was unstoppable as he galloped across this last stretch of track. His breathing was slightly harsh. He tossed all the noise to the back of his mind as he sped in the wind. All his eyes could see was the finishing line. He had to fight for his future. No one here was his brother, and no one was his old acquaintance either. He knew what his placement in the Jinyi Wei meant, but it was far from enough. His aspirations lay in the battlefields. He had to fight a path out for himself in Shen Zequan's presence, as only then would he be entrusted with heavy responsibilities. Yin Chang was so antsy that he slapped his thigh. He was burning with the desire to break into a run and chase after this lad. He hollered, "No cheating. How can you do that to your own people?" Horse hooves suddenly sent mud splattering as they followed hot on Huo Lingyuan's heels, like a bolt of lightning breaking through the dust. "Qiao Tianya!" Tantai Hu excitedly leaned out of the fence and roared, "Qiao Tianya!" Yao Wenyu's throat was parched. He seemed to hear the sound of solid ice cracking open as he saw Qiao Tianya's wildly fluttering hair in the gale of wind, as well as the proud and bold spirit in his brows. Huo Lingyuan frowned slightly when he saw Qiao Tianya closing in on him out of the corner of his eye. Qiao Tianya held back the taste of soil on the tip of his tongue and barked out a short laugh at Huo Lingyuan. Both men simultaneously lowered their bodies as they squeezed onto a single track between the unsteady fences. Qiao Tianya rarely seemed to have the impulse to win something, but in this boisterous din today, he was once again the lad of the Qiao clan who galloped his horse all over Chu capital 10 years ago. A riotous racket of intense shouts thundered through the riding track. The rich multicolored silk ball was hanging just right ahead. Fences fell over one after another like dominoes under the rapid beats of horse hooves. Huo Lingyuan gritted his teeth. The gale whipped the dust all over the sky, where they swirled and danced. His chest was almost bursting with the desire to win. Right at this moment, a horizontal bar of iron suddenly materialized before him. The force of the impact of a direct head-on collision would have been sufficient to knock a person over to the ground. Huo Lingyuan made a split decision and let go of his hand to flip over. As the horse continued sprinting, he dropped and rolled onto the ground, avoiding the iron bar. But after he landed, he heard Qiao Tianya still continuing on his charge ahead. He could not help but blurted in astonishment, "Qiao!" The burgundy-red battle steed charged over the iron bar with no one on its back. Yao Wenyu gripped the handles of his wheelchair. His breathing came to a standstill. A brief moment later, Qiao Tianya swiftly flipped back into position from the side of his horse. A hubbub of voices instantly broke out on the field. Xiao Qiye exclaimed, "Beautiful!" As the Jinyi Wei pounced at him, Qiao Tianya took down the multicolored silk ball and burst into hearty laughter. The bright, sunny day dissolved away all that was downtrodden and disillusioned in him into glistening sweat as he sat on horseback, looking the very picture of a valiant, dashing hero. Yao Wenyu's calm and composed face betrayed almost nothing as he released his grip, only to realize that Qiao Tianya was looking in his direction. Qiao Tianya withdrew his gaze and dismounted. He bumped shoulders with Fei Sheng and blocked Fei Sheng's line of sight that was drifting towards Huo Lingyun. Fei Sheng did not say a word. The race was over and now they had to go in front of Shen Zequan to receive their reward. Carrying his folding fan in hand, Shen Zequan cut a tall, graceful figure as he said, "Since I've said it's a big reward, then I naturally can't use money and material commodities to reward all of you off. The commander-in-chief position of the Duan Province Imperial Cavalry has been vacated all this time." He paused for a moment. "Today, this seat shall be handed over to Qiao Tianya." Exactly as expected. Fei Sheng, who was kneeling, lowered his head, totally crestfallen. There were people all around here. He could not pull a long face at his master, but his disappointment was real. He could only manage with some difficulty to raise his spirit and maintain the composed expression on his face. Fei Sheng will be transferred to assume the post of the Imperial Cavalry's vice commander. Same goes for Huo Lingyun. The Zongbo Jinyue are thereby renamed Imperial Cavalry. You still have the authority to make urgent reports directly, and you are not subordinate to the Duan Province garrison troops. The tassel of Shen Zequan's fan swayed in the wind. He continued, "You belong directly to the Shen Lanzhou. A private cavalry." Tan Taihu and Gu Jin exchanged glances in slight astonishment. Everyone knew about the preparation for the establishment of the Imperial Cavalry, but they thought that this light cavalry would be merged into the Duan Province garrison troops to be placed under the charge of the Duan Province Prefectural Prefect's Yamen. A private cavalry meant that the posts of the Imperial Cavalry practically remained unchanged. They were still a troop directly under Shen Zequan's command. They were not subjected to the supervision and inspection of the 6 prefectures of Zongbo. In fact, they even had the authority to supervise and inspect the 6 prefectures of Zongbo. Unlike military forces with progressive ranks like the garrison troops, they would only serve and pledge loyalty to Shen Zequan. Xiao Qiye propped up the teapot and drank another cup of hot tea. Seeing as it was already late, he said, "Tend to the horses first before sending them back to the stables. Take good care of them." Fei Sheng immediately rose to his feet and instructed the others to clear away the screen and charcoal brazier, while Shen Zequan and Xiao Qiye took their leave first. Yao Wenyu bent over to take Hanu into his arms. When he straightened up again, he saw Qiao Tianya standing before him. Blocking Huo Lingyun, Qiao Tianya pointed to Fei Sheng on the other end, and said, "Once you're done cleaning up, wait in the main courtyard for your orders." The atmosphere around Huo Lingyun did not bode well. He gave an indifferent nod of his head and stepped around Qiao Tianya. Yao Wenyu was looking at the cat when a colored silk ball suddenly fell into his arms. He raised his eyes and found that Qiao Tianya was still looking at Huo Lingyun. Yao Wenyu grasped that multicolored ball. It still had Qiao Tianya's sweat on it. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 220, Figure. While the prefectural lord and second master were having their meal, Kong Ling and the other gentlemen were drinking tea in the side hall waiting for them. Yu Xiaozhe said quietly to Kong Ling, "I just hope that everyone will get along today and not dampen his lordship's spirits." All of them were present at the riding tracks, where they had a clear look of the fierce battle that had gone down between formidable foes on horseback. Fei Sheng's reputation among the Jinyue was not one to be trifled with, and he had also previously rendered meritorious service while serving under Shen Zequan. Huo Lingyun could not afford to shoulder the blame for offending him. Kong Ling covered his mouth with a handkerchief and set aside his chopsticks. Since his lordship did not say a word about it, there's no way anyone can kick up a commotion about this incident. You should not belittle Qiao Tianya either. He naturally must have his strengths for his lordship to value and respect him to such an extent. Kong Ling had the clearest idea of what Shen Zequan was thinking, having already figured him out. This horse race might have been a spur of the moment idea, but the prefectural lord's awarding of reward was not. Fei Shen took credit for risking his life to protect the prefectural lord before, and then he had the tangible result to show for as the attendant officer in the taking down of Fan province. No doubt Shen Zequan would put Fei Shen to use somewhere more suitable, but at the same time, Shen Zequan would not let Fei Shen get a monopoly on power either. He had to simultaneously mobilize Qiao Tianya and Huo Lingyun so that these three people would form an iron triangle of a powerful trio who mutually held each other in check under his command. The outcome of today's horse race was exactly as the prefectural lord expected. Shen Zequan drew a clear distinction between his personal relations and official business. From the Jinyi Way to the 6 prefectures, he was in the process of quietly establishing an equilibrium of power imbued with checks and balances. Shen Zequan was not as forceful and striking as Xiao Qiye was when it came to the management of his subordinates, but he always remained securely seated at the peak, holding every single subordinate firmly in the palm of his hand as he had them achieve a delicate balance. Kong Ling could not help but sigh ruefully as he thought to this point. Qi Huilian truly was the mentor of the emperor. ******. Shen Zequan tapped the wiki pieces as he played a game against Xiao Qiye. They had rekindled an interest in it after the last round in Yuan Zuo's residence and were presently sitting around digesting their meals. What happened with Qiao Tianya was not in the cards, Xiao Qiye said. Seeing how he made no attempt to be in Tse province, I even suspected that he had already seen through the secular world and was on the verge of renouncing himself from the pursuit of fame and fortune. I had the same sentiments. With his fingertips, Shen Zequan turned around the wiki piece that was cold to the touch. But opportunities abound everywhere in life. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. Xiao Qiye propped his arms on his knees and gave the prefectural lord his undivided attention. Shen Zequan set the wiki piece down. Qiao Tianya was a vice commander in the Jinyi Way who could even take the liberty to mobilize the Jinyi Way operatives back then when he apprehended you at the Nanlin hunting grounds. This in itself is evident of Ji Lei's preferential treatment of him. Even as an official slapped with a crime, he could eke out a spot for himself in Chu capital and one-up Fei Shen. To be able to do that, he can't do without both craftiness and drive. My guess is that he bowed out in Tse province because of Yuan Zuo's debilitating health, but despite his desire to retreat, Yuan Zhou pushed him back into the game. Shen Zequan hesitated over Huo Lingyun's placement when Fan province attained a great victory. At that time, Yao Wenyu proposed to place Huo Lingyun into the Jinyi Way. As long as Shen Zequan agreed, he would have to put Qiao Tianya to use again because Huo Lingyun could not hold Fei Shen in check in the Jinyi Way. Both of them sure are interesting. At this point, Xiao Qiye remembered the venerable master Yideng of whom they hadn't found any trace of for a while now. Yuan Zuo's chronic ailment is a tough one to heal. Shen Zequan nodded slightly. This is the reason Yuan Zhou pushed Qiao Tianya back into the game. After a moment of silence, Xiao Qiye said, "The paths of talented men never run smooth." The atmosphere was slightly heavy as Shen Zequan nudged the wiki piece under the candlelight and said, "The medicine Yuan Zhou is taking can't cure the illness once and for all at its root. Physicians come and go, but not a single one of them dares to give a definitive answer. The poison he was fed with in Dan City was meant to take his life." Xiao Qiye tossed the wiki stone between his fingers into its box. The venerable master Yideng became untraceable after the 10th month of last year. I asked Shifu back in dying, but he had no idea either. The venerable master made it clear when he left dying that he would return after the new year to check on my eldest brother again. But it's already almost the 3rd month, and there's still no sign of him. Shen Zequan's health was a constant worry to Xiao Qiye, and seeing Yao Wenyu so frail and weak now, he could not help but feel as if Shen Zequan would share the same fate. He rose to his feet and pushed aside the wiki board, disregarding the Wiki stone bouncing all over the table as he stubbornly stroked Shen Zequan's cheek. By the 4th month at the very latest, Xiao Qiye's gaze spoke volumes as he said in a deep voice with his palm on Shen Zequan's cheek, "I'll find the venerable master, even if I have to dig to the very center of the earth." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Lanterns hung high in the office compound, with the slab stones swept so clean that there was not a single speck of dust on them. This courtyard was newly selected. Several years ago, it was a compound for the officials of the Duan province Yamen to rest their feet while on duty, and now it had been vacated out for the Jinyi Wei to use as an office compound, with several rooms excavated to form a main central hall. Fei Sheng sat inside with one foot on a stool drinking his wine. Several of his fellow brothers surrounded him and dug into the wine dishes until the plates were a mess. Every one of them was glancing outside. Huo Lingyuan was squatting on the steps with his back to them, eating dry rations with cold water. He was midway through when a kujia ball suddenly came flying over from the side and smashed into his water canteen, which fell to the ground and wetted the corner of his robe. He swallowed the ration in his mouth and turned his head over to look. The Jinyi Wei under the tree grinned at him. "It's dark in the courtyard. I didn't see clearly." Huo Lingyuan reached out an arm to pick up the ball, then rose to his feet and wiped his mouth. The Jinyi Wei teased Huo Lingyuan. "At the count of 2, throw it back to." Before he could finish his words, Huo Lingyuan threw the kujia ball out. That leather ball flew over the wall and in no time, disappeared from sight. Huo Lingyuan rubbed away a handful of snow and answered, "It's dark in the courtyard. I didn't see clearly." Fei Sheng picked up the food and ate without turning his head around. Meanwhile, the Jinyi Wei beside him had all stood up. The one across from him crossed past the branch and went over to bump into Huo Lingyuan, scolding in jest, "Son of a bitch, throwing it that far. Aren't you going to pick it up?" One of the lanterns in the courtyard suddenly went out, casting a veil of darkness over this side. Huo Lingyuan felt a blow to his abdomen. He rolled up his sleeve and threw out a fist. The steps were slippery and the few of them tripped him, causing his punch to strike at empty air. The next moment, Huo Lingyuan was thrown down to the ground. He protected his head and took a few more blows. Qiao Tianya strode in from the courtyard entrance and kicked them one after another without even lifting the hem of his robe. His voice was frosty as he berated them, "Get up, all of you. What's going on here?" Fei Sheng shifted his butt and turned his head aside to look down the stairs with a placid expression. "Why are you creating a scene here?" Huo Lingyuan was still protecting his head. He had been kicked until he was covered in shoe prints all over. He spat out a mouthful of blood from the gap between his arms and leaped to his feet. Qiao Tianya looked at Fei Sheng who said, "I didn't hear a thing." "Xiao Huo, why didn't you shout for me?" Huo Lingyuan's mouth was full of ice fragments. He spat out several more mouthfuls of them, paying no heed at all to Fei Sheng. "A few years ago when we received our authority tokens, Qiao Tianya pulled off the authority token on the waist of the Jinyi Wei before him and held it up for everyone in the courtyard to see. He raised his voice. I bloody said that we have to be of one heart and one mind, to be brothers. Take off your tokens now, all of you." Not daring to hesitate, the Jinyi Wei in the courtyard raised their hands in unison to remove their authority tokens. The Jinyi Wei's authority token was a symbol of their identity, one they had to hold on to carefully, even loaning it out was out of the question. They once wore the tokens when they basked in those days of glory back in Chu capital, and they also wore the tokens when they followed Shen Zequan in his rise to power in Zongbo. The authority token itself was an embodiment of their own honor and dignity. "Go on, throw it." Qiao Tianya tossed the authority token down at his feet and kicked it away without so much as a glance at it. He looked around at everyone. "Or are you keeping it to trample all over it?" I said, "Throw it." The Jinyi Wei tossed their authority tokens on the ground, none of them daring to meet Qiao Tianya right in the eyes. They lowered their heads in dejection and stood at the side like wooden statues. Fei Sheng's smile faded. Wiping the corners of his lips, he said, "Isn't that a bit too much? What is there that you can't sit and talk over instead of having to throw everyone's dignity to the ground to trample on? Whose dignity are you talking about?" Qiao Tianya asked Fei Sheng. "Everyone's. Or yours?" The flames of the fury that Fei Sheng had been forcibly suppressing suddenly leaped up high. He pushed back the chair with a clatter as he stood up and said, "Is my dignity what he's trampling on today? He's clearly trampling on me as an individual. What? So it serves me right to be a stepping stone for someone else? You, Qiao Tianya, had it all worked out, didn't you?" Qiao Tianya ordered, "Get out." The Jin Yue in the courtyard immediately withdrew, leaving only the three of them behind. Fei Sheng flung the chopsticks in his hand into the wine cup. His unwillingness to take it lying down blazed along with his fury. He kicked over the table with a foot and turned around to point at Huo Lingyun. "Does it feel good to trample on me, huh? You have to snatch all the attention, make a grab for master's rewards and even take credit for the venerable old man's military achievements before. You really don't give a shit about anyone, huh?" Then he pointed at Qiao Tianya and questioned in an icy tone, "Did you already have it all planned out with him?" "Oh yeah," Qiao Tianya straightened up. "All to plot against you." The candlelight in the hall shone bright and it was here that Fei Sheng stood, while Huo Lingyun stood outside in the pitch-black darkness. Meanwhile, Qiao Tianya stood on that boundary line between black and white, partially blocking off both parties. A dark crow on a snow-tipped branch of an old tree cawed a few times. Fei Sheng's chest heaved. He took a few sudden steps closer. "I put my life on the line being on the move with master, and you screwed me over with the son of a bitch of a newcomer." Fei Sheng pointed at himself, so overwhelmed with resentment that both his eyes went red. "I was the one who opened the gates of Chu capital, defended Wuxian Peak in Dun province, and took down Fan province with the venerable old man. So why can't I assume this position? On what grounds does it have to be you, Qiao Tianya? To think I even consider you as my fucking brother." Qiao Tianya pressed in a step closer. "You think of me as your brother and yet you say I plotted against you? I told you a long time ago, don't keep dwelling on this matter. What's meant to be yours will eventually be yours." Fei Sheng immediately retorted, "Shouldn't this position be mine?" The startled night crow on the snow-tipped branch promptly took off. The remaining lanterns swayed in the courtyard, distorting the shadows on the ground. In this tense, antagonistic atmosphere, Fei Sheng shoved Qiao Tianya aside, descended the stairs in a few steps, and ignored the shouts as he headed right for the exit. He could not stay here for even a moment more. Fei Sheng ignored everyone else after stepping out of the courtyard. Having consumed quite a fair bit of wine, he supported himself against the wall as he walked. He slipped a few times and bumped his head, bruising it. All of a sudden, he squatted at the foot of the wall and wiped his eyes as he grieved and lashed out at no one in particular, "Fuck." Sobering up a little, Fei Sheng blew his nose. Someone ahead blew his nose too. Startled, Fei Sheng jerked to his feet and saw a head popping out in front. Yin Chang had his hands folded under his sleeves as he leaned up ahead to wait for him. He smacked his lips a few times and asked, "The heck you crying for?" Fei Sheng did not move even after having discerned that it was the old man. He merely remained motionless in place and said nothing. "Come on, let's go," Yin Chang urged as he stomped his freezing feet. "We'll find a place to drink. It's rather cold to be standing around like poles here." Fei Sheng did not want to. He could be rather bull-headed when he was being stubborn, and he was still fuming inside. Yin Chang rubbed his arms. "It's just one tooth that got knocked off, man. Why get into a hissy fit with them over it?" Fei Sheng tossed away the handkerchief he used to wipe his hands, his expression as capricious as the weather. Eventually, he forced out a smile and said, "What's there for me to get into a fit with them over?" Yin Chang craned his neck to look at Fei Sheng's expression. The reach of the light from the lanterns ahead did not extend to this spot. Fei Sheng stood with his head lowered and averted his head away in refusal to show the old man. Yin Chang was so cold he could not stand it. Taking small, brisk steps, he said, "Since that position has already been given to him, then so be it. The way I see it, you're formidable, too. Gu Jin is a man of outstanding abilities, and only you in our Zongbo can compare to him. Qiao Tianya doesn't have the capability to. We still have a future, so why insist on getting in a huff at him here? Mind that his lordship doesn't see it, or he'll rebuff you for being petty." Fei Sheng's fury blazed with even more vehemence. Yin Chang took no notice of him and continued, "You oppress Huo Lingyun to the extent it is so unwarranted and unbefitting of the occasion. How can you convince and win over the others? There are still those from the Deng province garrison troops in the Jinyi Way. Would they not feel disillusioned? What does a commander-in-chief do? He oversees an entire army. So, how can this position be given to you if you can't show a little tolerance?" Fei Sheng raised his voice. "Is it only Qiao Tianya who can do it? Is it only Qiao Tianya who is capable? When it comes to people, Qiao Tianya does indeed have the capability." Yin Chang sighed and went around to the other side of Fei Sheng. The old man was short, so when he stood near Fei Sheng, he was several heads shorter. "Look at him. He didn't vie with you in Tse province, yet his prestige remains intact. Has he or has he not advised you not to keep oppressing Huo Lingyun? All right, don't say a word. I know you're going to say that you didn't oppress Huo Lingyun, but have you ever assigned him to any of the Jinyi Wei's tasks?" "No, right." Fei Sheng said, "Am I his mother? I even have to take care of all his needs from eating to drinking and pissing to pooping." Yin Chang leaped up to whack him. "You dope, why don't you get it? You yourself know best what you did." With that, he shoved Fei Sheng. "Move it, now." Fei Sheng staggered under the force of the shove. Yin Chang kicked his ass and cursed, "I'd totally whip you if you were my son." Fei Sheng tugged at his dirty robe. He was so pissed he turned back and yelled, "I have a fucking father. Keep your eyes on the road. If you want this position that badly, I'll go beg his lordship tomorrow and kowtow to him until you get it back. See if that shames you." Yin Chang took a few steps and added, "I have a fucking son, too." This was something new to Fei Sheng. In all the time Yin Chang was in Tse province, he rarely spoke of his past. "If my son were still alive, he would be of the same age as you." After keeping his mouth shut for a while, Fei Sheng suddenly asked, "So, how did he die?" Yin Chang's feet crunched noisily on the snow. He was finally able to get a clear look at the path with the aid from the starlight overhead. He shrank his neck and answered, "Starvation." Fei Sheng held onto the wall, not daring to talk back to the old man again. When Yin Chang was young, he used to hang around the marketplace. He was a lad of lowly origins, with no trade skills and education. To earn his bread, he went to great efforts to enlist in the army. At that time, the registration of households in the census registers that Qi Huilian implemented had just come to Tse province, and Yin Chang made it in time to exploit the last loophole to join the garrison troops where he stayed for 30 years. He lived hand to mouth, one day at a time, in the garrison troops. Although he was illiterate, he got himself well acquainted with the terrains. It was just as he had boasted to Fei Sheng. As long as it was in Zongbo, he would not go the wrong way even with his eyes closed. Ordinary bandits were no match for him at all. Yin Chang did not want to bring up his wife and son because they died of starvation during the reign of Xiand. That was the prelude to Yin Chang's liquor addiction. He looked back on his past and felt himself to be like the mud beneath his feet, one who had never amounted to much in this life. "You have a future serving his lordship, and you have so much more promise than me." Yin Chang looked at the road under his feet. "Xiao Sheng, One has to be down to earth in their journey through life. You can't keep on just looking upward. You know it better than I do that the wiser and mightier the master is, the harder he is to serve. You can't fool his lordship, and you can't hide what you're thinking from him. Do you think his lordship doesn't know about this temperament of yours? Didn't he still go ahead and put you to use by his side? That's because you have talent. You fixed your eyes on Xiao Tianya and Huo Lingyun, but the two of them don't walk the same path as you. You're an intelligent lad, albeit a silly one. Don't bear a grudge against them over this bit of trivial matter and ruin the bond you have forged with his lordship and wreck your future prospects. Fei Sheng felt even more aggrieved at this point. He walked up ahead and wiped his face. Fei Sheng's father was an illegitimate son of a concubine from the Fei clan. By the time it came to Fei Sheng, he had become so far removed from the legitimate lineage that he could not even benefit from a connection to the Marquis of Helion from his very same clan. Moreover, his father was a gambler. Had he not died early, Fei Sheng would probably not have been able to hold on to his position of the assistant commander of the Jinyi Wei. Fei Sheng had served under a number of people. In order to make connections with the Marquis of Helion back then, he spent all day flattering the young master Fei Shi. Then he followed Han Cheng, who kept bossing him around like he was his son. He was not a gentleman of virtue. He was not anything. He merely wanted to come out of his ordeal stronger and etch out a name for himself. The old man said, "You make little of Huo Lingyun, but I heard he is also of decent origins. His father was someone who fought the bandits. It's not easy from him to survive and stay alive. Don't keep giving him such a hard time." Fei Sheng said, "He stole your military credits. Then just give it to him." Yin Chang walked behind Fei Sheng and looked up at Fei Sheng's back while the latter was unaware. After a long time, he said, "How many years more do I have to live? It's pointless for me to hold on to it anyway." Fei Sheng was still young, with a tall stature and a strong, healthy physique. Without realizing it, Yin Chang stopped. It seemed as if this was only as far as he could go. Even if he refused to concede defeat to old age, he could not catch up with the pace of the younger generation. It was another world ahead of them. For a long time, he watched as Fei Sheng continued walking forward. Along this road. "Xiao Sheng, this old man is a good-for-nothing who can't even keep his son alive in his lifetime. But believe me, I can tell that you will live to 100 years and retire with merit to your name. So keep walking." Yin Chang paused for a moment and suddenly shouted, "Onward and forward." Fei Sheng looked back at Yin Chang, finding the old man's gaze unfamiliar. In this life of his, he had never been gazed upon this attentively by his father, so he did not understand the hope and expectation that lay behind this gaze. He stopped in his tracks and said, "You keep walking, too." Yin Chang inexplicably started to laugh. He smoothed up his messy white hair to reveal his weathered and worn face. "I'm already old." *******. In the end, the Jinyi Wei did not let the commotion escalate. Even if Fei Sheng was displeased, he knew his place. The next day, as he handed the medicine to Shen Zequan, he heard Shen Zequan asked, "Did you drink?" Fei Sheng saw that the prefectural lord was still approving the cases and was not looking up at him. The latter seemed to be just asking in passing. Feeling unsettled and unable to figure out Shen Zequan's intent, Fei Sheng could only answer truthfully. "I drank a little last night." Shen Zequan handed the cases he had finished approving over to Fei Sheng and said, "Head over to the office compound yourself to forfeit your salary as penalty." It was not Fei Sheng's turn to be on duty yesterday. Unable to make any sense of it, he took the cases and gingerly attempted to explain, "It wasn't my turn yesterday too. Didn't I tell you to handle the recruitment?" Shen Zequan finally raised his eyes to look at Fei Sheng. "This job is not complete until the register of names have been submitted." Fei Sheng was taken aback, and then delight took over him. Grasping the cases, he fell to his knees with a thud and said, "Master is wise. I'll get it done right away. With the Imperial Cavalry's commander-in-chief position given to Qiao Tianye, Fei Sheng thought that his previous assignments would be handed over to Qiao Tianye, too. This was an important assignment that involved the vetting and recruitment of soldiers, which carried a lot of weight in the newly established light cavalry. He never expected the task to fall to him still. Shen Zequan exercised his neck a little and cast a sidelong glance at the window. It was sunny days on end in Duan province now that it was nearing the third month, and the snow in the courtyard had more or less melted. Faint light filtered through the window paper and shone upon his right ear, creating a gorgeous but tiny glow swaying on his neck. Xiao Qiye was standing in the courtyard at this time, having received new information on Chu capital from Gu Jin. End chapter.